Well, welcome back to a very special episode of Fearless. I am here in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm sitting here at the Billy Graham Training Center in my grandfather's office. And joining me today is Secretary Scott Turner, Secretary of Housing Urban Development. What an honor to have you here, Secretary. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you. It's an honor for me to be here with you, Sissy, and also to be in your grandfather's office. I'm truly humbled to sit before you.
Well, we're grateful. You're here. You're going to be with Samaritan's Purse today on the ground viewing just the aftermath of Hurricane Helene.
Yes.
Well, first off, I want to say my husband and you have something in common. You both played in the NFL, but you both played for the San Diego Chargers. I figure that's history because there's no such thing as a San Diego Charger now.
That's right. And that's heartbreaking. And I'm sure your husband feels the same. But I can't wait to meet him. We do have the NFL in common, but to play for the same team, that's pretty special.
Yeah. So that was a fun a fun chapter in our life, but it seems like a lifetime ago now. But Mr. Secretary, if people didn't know your name a few weeks ago, they do now. Especially after you prayed at the president's first cabinet meeting. Your prayer went viral. I think the American people wanted to see that. They needed to hear it. But look, we know that wasn't PR. That wasn't a political stunt for you. That is your heart. You have a pastoral heart. And so I want the American people to get to know you. There's many secretaries that I feel the country knows a little bit better than others, but I want them to know about you. Give us a better understanding. Where do you come from? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you. So I'm from Dallas, Texas, born and raised, fourth generation Texan from Dallas. My mom and dad, Eric and Essie Turner, were high school sweethearts, got married right after high school. Unfortunately, their marriage ended in divorce when I was 10 years old. But there was two things that I took from my parents in the midst, as you say, from tragedy. One, my mother taught me to have a strong faith in the Lord Jesus from a young age. And my father taught me to work extremely hard and to be a good steward of the gifts that I have. And so I thank my parents for that. And I thank God for that. I went to the University of Illinois. I studied speech comm and graduated in speech comm. I ran track and played football. And a lot of times people think, well, he's a football player, but I also ran indoor and outdoor track, which kept me very busy, but also kept me in tremendous shape. I met my wife, Robin, at Illinois. We've been married 29 years, February 17th, this past February. So that's been a beautiful story. And then my son, Solomon, who is my nephew that Robin and I raised from the time he was 8 years old. He also graduated from the University of Illinois. So we have a trifecta, if you will.
You were the Southerners that went north.
We went north, yes. And we try to leave our mark there at Illinois. From Illinois, I was drafted by the Washington Redskins in 1995 in the 7th round as a cornerback and had tremendous mentorship at the Redskins, played there for 3 years, then went on to our beloved San Diego Chargers for 4 years and the Denver Broncos for 2 additional seasons. When I retired from the NFL, I served in the House of Representatives in Texas in House District 33, which was a great responsibility, but also a great opportunity to serve the people of Texas. And from there, I worked in the first Trump administration with Dr. Ben Carson, and here we are now.
Oh, Miss Candy Carson's been good to me over the years.
They are wonderful.
They're wonderful. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, maybe we'll talk about this. But what are some of the experiences, even hardships from earlier on in your life that you believe prepared you for where the Lord has you now?
Well, as I alluded to, my parents went through a terrible divorce, which was heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for every child. And the parents as well. But it was there that my relationship with the Lord, even as a small child, when I say small, 8, 9, 10 years old, I can just remember being in the presence of the Lord and having a peace in the midst of chaos. And God just really comforting me. And it would be me, the Lord, my remote control car, and my Bible. And I remembered, I'm 53 now, and those are some of the fondest memories that I have of really just being alone with him. And obviously I couldn't articulate it then, but I can now. And so that being a tragedy in my life actually was a tremendous blessing because I spent time with the Lord and really he spent time with me. As a teenager, as a young adult, and even today, I cherish those times to spend the first part of my day with the Lord and his presence and his word. And so I would say, Sissy, that tragedy really taught me how to cherish the time I do have with him. And I think from being in athletics, and you'll know a lot about this, athletics teaches you how to overcome adversity. I'm 5'10", 175 pounds. I'm in college at the University of Illinois. I had to play 3 different positions. The coaches didn't know where to put me. I was a tremendous athlete. I was a Big Ten champion in a 400-meter dash, but yet I couldn't get on the field. I had a dream to play in the NFL, but it was seemingly dissipating year by year. And that taught me, 1, to trust God, 2, to never quit, 3, to be a blessing to others, even if my dream wasn't coming true, to serve others and help them to be great. And then when my opportunity did come and God opened the door for me to play, now it's, what do you do with it? Well, you finish it. God is a God of completion. And so that taught me not only how to overcome adversity, but to be a good steward of an opportunity that I have and honor God with it, but finish the job. And so I think that's helped me in ministry. It's helped me in business. It's helped me in being a servant leader, an elected official, and then now today, in leading the wonderful people of HUD and serving our country.
Well, I'm so curious. Tell us about that day at the time, President-elect Trump, now President Trump, when he called you and you got a phone call about your current position.
Well, it was about 9:30 in the morning, and Dr. Carson and his team told me, hey, we just met with the president in Florida, and be expecting his call. I said, all right. So about 9:30 on Wednesday morning, I'll never forget, I had literally just finished my devotion, and the president called. I said, hello. He said, Scott, it's Donald Trump. I said, yes, sir, Mr. President. And he said, I just met with Ben. We both adore Ben Carson. We both love him and respect him tremendously. And he said, Scott, do you think you can do this job at HUD? I said, yes, sir. And he said, I do too. And so the president, in the midst of everything he had going, took time to encourage me and tell me, even before he nominated me, that I could do it. And he said, come see me. And he said, do you want to bring your wife? I said, yes. And so my wife and I and our team from Dr. Carson's staff, we visited with the president. It literally was a visit. We just talked to him, and he encouraged us, and he challenged us, and he wanted to hear my plan and my vision. And then he said, it's done. And that's how it went.
Well, I love hearing that Dr. Carson's was behind this, because he is so beloved by the American people, and he has been loyal to President Trump for many years. And so I think people were kind of concerned, like, where's Dr. Carson? And so he's been an encouragement to you and helping you with this role. Oh,
absolutely. And I will say this so people know that, Ben Carson and I, by God's grace and God's, just supreme power, are tremendously close. He's a great mentor to me. There's not a time that I call Ben Carson that he doesn't answer me and call me back. He is an encourager to me. He's brilliant, but yet he's so humble. And he's taught me how to be a true servant leader and a statesman. Dr. Carson could have any position in this administration that he wanted. And he felt like the Lord said, you know what, Scott, I want you to lead HUD because I believe in you. And you have everything that you need to do the job. And so instead of him saying, yes, he want this or he wanted that, he said, Mr. President, I believe Scott should be the one to lead HUD. And that just speaks to his character and his humility and really his faith and knowing that it's not about him, but it's about the Lord God Almighty. And so I hope that the American people know his true heart. And if you're looking for him, he's there. He is a tremendous backstop and teacher to many of us.
I'm sure he is. He's quite the historian too. I could listen to him all day long.
He and Candy.
Yeah, I love Miss Candy. She's a mess and she's a hoot. She cracks me up. So let's talk about you in Washington, D.C. Whew. That's like, some people call that the devil's town. And we know as followers of Christ, the Lord commands us to be, a city on a hill and to take our light anywhere. It's a hard place to work. So tell us about that. How has even working as a pastor inside of a church prepared you for Washington, D.C.?
Well, I'll take it back to the NFL. The NFL locker room is like no other place on earth.
That is true.
And
that's
for a Christian, for a man of God, for someone who professes to be set apart, by the power of God, the NFL locker room is not the most welcoming place. But we are called to be salt and light. We're called to be a light on the hill. And, a lot of times in the NFL, in particular with these athletes, as you know, they've had some sort of godliness or training or church or someone that's influenced them through the years, a mother, a aunt, a grandmother. And so from the NFL to the halls of Congress, to the State House, to the White House, whatever it is, we're called to literally be a vessel for Christ and to be ambassadors for him. And so going to Washington, D.C., I'm excited, because it's another opportunity. It's another platform. It's a mission field, sissy, to reach people for the Lord. HUD is a great vehicle, but the kingdom is the mission. HUD is the vehicle that God chose. But the kingdom, to bring thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. What does that mean? That means that even without saying a word, that people could know Christ through my life. And to be a leader of HUD, to be a servant leader, to be a steward of HUD, to pray for people, to encourage people, to lead people, to serve people. That's how I look at Washington. And I think when we have that kind of view, that we can serve in a greater measure.
Well, let's talk about HUD. I don't even know if maybe the American people know what HUD does. Tell us, what is the role of HUD, and why, as we as Christians, should we care about the role of HUD?
So HUD stands for Housing and Urban Development. It was established in 1965 by Lyndon B. Johnson. And HUD's role is to serve the most vulnerable people in our country as it pertains to housing assistance, helping people get back on their feet. HUD also has a responsibility when it comes to homelessness and also disaster recovery. And so when you look at HUD, you think housing, but we have about 14 to 15 programs in HUD to carry out the mission of HUD as it pertains to housing, disaster recovery, and homelessness. And so our job at HUD is to serve those in our country, both rural, tribal, and urban communities as it pertains to housing. And, HUD is a unique place. It's not partisan because housing doesn't have a party. Housing impacts every American individual and family. And we take that very seriously at HUD. We get to serve people literally where they are in their home or their need for home or their need, like here in Asheville, their need to rebuild their house or rebuild their family, rebuild their business. So we're touching people in every aspect of life. And I would encourage people to go read about HUD. Go look at HUD because we serve all communities across America.
Well, the secretaries, all of you have walked into some major challenges and some crisis going on in our nation right now. And your role at HUD is no different. Homelessness is an all-time high in our country, up to 32%. It's not even in the big cities. It's every town you go in. I think all Americans are shocked by the rise of homelessness. So what are some of the challenges right now that you are facing in your office?
Well, sis, you're exactly right. Homelessness just in this past year has gone up 18%. There's a report called the Point in Time report that's done by HUD. So December of 2024, the Point in Time report came out, and one single night in January of 2024, there was over 770,000 individuals homeless on the streets of America. And that's unacceptable. With all-time record funding for HUD in previous years, in previous administration, homelessness, as you said, has gone up tremendous, like 32% over the last 3 to 4 years. And so this is unacceptable in our country. And so we need to work with nonprofits more. Yeah. We need to work with faith-based institutions more. And people say, why? Because nonprofit and faith-based institutions are the ones who have boots on the ground. They have their hands to the plow. They're in the community. They have data-driven results. The federal government is not the answer. The federal government is a great convener of sorts, facilitator of sorts. But the private sector, the nonprofit, and the faith-based institutions, that's where the real work is being done. So that's why we're here. That's why we're in LA, and we'll continue to do a better job of working with these groups to eradicate homelessness.
Well, I think President Trump and the American people have pretty high expectations of the secretaries to come in and cut some of this red tape that is holding some of the American people back. And so I'm sure you've been really busy. You've only been in office 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
A month.
1 month. Let's talk about your first month. What have y'all been doing?
Well, we hit the ground running. We're really blessed to have a tremendous team. And I tell people all the time, I have the best team in DC. And people say, wow, they care. Not only do they have great experience from past administrations, from private sector, from nonprofit, but to a person, to a man and woman on this team at HUD, they actually care about the mission and they care about the people. So from the first day, we got to work. We took down the equal access rule, which protects our ladies in homeless shelters, because before men, transgenders were able to come into HUD-funded facilities like women homeless shelters, and that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
And so we took down the equal access rules so that we could make sure that any HUD-funded facility, that the leaders and the people that run those facilities can properly identify those that are coming into those shelters. We also just recently took down a burdensome regulation which impedes building affordable housing. And this regulation was a Biden-Obama era rule called AFFH, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. And what this did, essentially, it was a zoning tax. It was socially engineering neighborhoods. So you take Dubuque, Iowa, and you take Chicago, Illinois. Those places are totally different. But this AFFH rule had a regional aspect to it to say, okay, Chicago and Dubuque, you all have to build the same. Your needs are the same. This is not a one-size-fit-all deal. And so it was the American families actually were losing and the federal government was causing winners and looters. So we tore it down. And what this does, it restores power back to localities. It restores power back to the states and local governments because they know the needs that they have as it pertains to housing. And it's also going to save our neighborhoods. And so we have been hard and fast at work, working with the president and working with other agencies to make sure that the programs that we have are serving the American people.
Yeah. And for the next 4 years, you're going to be very busy.
Yes.
That's your vision for HUD. But you're here in North Carolina. You're going to be with our team at Samaritan's Purse today on the ground seeing victims of Hurricane Helene. Of course, we've hosted President Trump. He was just here a little bit ago, Secretary Kristi Noem and Tulsi Gabbard, which I believe that means you're probably all going to get together and have a meeting of what needs to be better. What are some of the problems we can fix, especially after I mentioned to you, I moved from Southwest Florida. We have been hit heavy over the last couple of years and then moving up here. And of course, Helene took Western North Carolina by surprise. When y'all come together for this meeting, I assume you're going to have in Washington, D.C., what can you expect of that?
Well, one, first of all, I'm here to do a lot of listening to the people on the ground because the people will tell you the story. The people on the ground have the heartbeat of the community. The people on the ground are ones who have experienced this devastation, but they also know what they need. And so this is kind of like a paradigm shift. And the secretaries that you mentioned that were here, Tulsi and Secretary Noem, and I know Secretary Rollins was also here, and the president was here. They're all great listeners. And so we come together, it's like, what did you find out? What needs did you hear? How can we as interagencies, how can we together help those that are on the ground? How can we partner with those that are on the ground to ensure and to help the rebuilding and repairing of people's homes and people's lives and businesses here in Asheville?
I'm glad you said that. I've often said that about the president. When you sit down with him and you share a concern, he listens. He might not have an answer right away. He'll say, I'll think about that. And he'll come back, and he does. He thinks about that. So that is something I've always praised him for and grateful. And even when you look back in his history with business and who he's listened to over the years. But I believe government can't fix everything. And you've already alluded to this. I believe God did not intend government to do it all.
Sure.
Can't do it all. I think there's a role of government and there's a role for the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been all across this country and across the globe with Samaritan's Purse in the aftermath of disasters. I have never seen what I did here in Western North Carolina like I've seen the local church. And the reason is for that, I live in Boone, North Carolina, where our headquarters are. It's where I was born and raised and grew up. We have one Walmart. We don't have 3 Walmarts. We don't have a Target. We have one Walmart. That Walmart had 4 feet of water in it. So it shut down for 5 months. That is a lifeline to the mountain people of around Boone, North Carolina. So you take that out, where do you go? The churches became the local Walmart. This was a response, a once in a lifetime responses to these churches. Samaritan's Purse, this is what we do. But for these churches, it was once in a lifetime. I've never seen the church rise up like I did here. But with HUD, as you move forward in your leadership, how do you view the role of government and local organizations coming together with one voice and moving forward to work together?
Well, that's very encouraging to hear how the church stepped up. And I believe that's what the church is supposed to do. It's to step up and not only just to be a witness of God's goodness and his grace, but also to have feet on the ground and to serve. Christian people ought to be the ones leading the way and serving those that are in need. And I believe that's what God has called us to do. Even Jesus said he didn't come to be served, but he came to serve. And that's a great example. And I think, by serving people, we're washing their feet. We're giving them an encouragement that I'm here with you in the lowest part of your life. I'm here with you in the most devastating time that you've seen. And I believe that's the role of the church. And not only that, but we can pray for people as the church. We can serve them. We can provide for families that are in need. And I believe that's the role of the church. The government, where the government comes in, obviously, is to be a facilitator and to use the resources that have been appropriated by Congress in the appropriate fashion to help those that are in a time of need. And so the government has its specific role and needs to stay there. The church, the private sector, nonprofits, faith-based organizations have a specific role. And I think when those two work in unison together, that there's nothing that we cannot do.
Well, Secretary, you have a busy day ahead.
Yes.
You are. You're going to go meet some of these homeowners and see what's been happening here in Western North Carolina. And then you're going to be meeting with some faith leaders here in Asheville. Thank you for coming and taking the time and serving. It's so evident that you have a servant's heart to serve the President of the United States and to serve the American people. And I just want to encourage those who are listening right now. We've been doing this lately. It's so easy to say to pray for our leaders and just quickly move on with your day. I encourage you, wherever you are, whether you're in your car, you're listening, you're at home or at work, take time right now. Take 1 minute to pray for Secretary Turner. He has a heavy job ahead of him, a big job, but God has equipped him. And I'm so thankful to have a man in position who knows he needs God each and every morning and God's wisdom only, for wisdom and discernment. So pray for him. Secretary, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Sissy.